Hey, hi folks. Hopefully I'm live, which will be good. Just set myself up with the comments and things that I can see on this end. So we'll just wait for a few minutes as people get kind of logged in. I can then check that everyone can see and hear me, which is always handy when you're on a podcast. And then we'll get talking. Okay, so I'm just going to check my own Facebook to see that I can see myself, which is always good. So we'll just give it a moment or two. So if any of you guys are watching, if you can just give me the thumbs up that I am live, you can see me, so that I'm not talking to myself for the next hour or so. Gabby's saying hi, which is good. Hi, Gabby. Thanks for joining. So basically today we're going to talk about, obviously Halloween is coming up, which is that time of the year that we all kind of look forward to. So kind of dress up, have some fun. And I thought it was a kind of pertinent time really to talk about Halloween from a kind of SRA perspective. So obviously we look at things slightly differently to the rest of the population that aren't really spiritual and aren't really into the energetics that obviously we kind of work with on a daily basis. So as most of you are aware, from a kind of SRA perspective, obviously we teach practitioners as an academy to basically clear energy from people's field. I was going to say hi to Agita and Marla, and obviously Gabby. So that's kind of what we do. So from an academy perspective, our kind of mission statement really is to clear or to train practitioners in the holistic field to clear people's fields, clients' fields, remove entities, attachments, portals, curses, interdimensional parasites, implants. There's a whole list, 30 odd things that we do. Hey, good to see you, Adriana. So basically, that's kind of where we are. That's kind of what we do. And obviously, we specialize in protection. So spiritual protection is at the core of everything we teach and everything we do. And for those guys that come on the training courses, which Adriana and Gabby will know, protection is our kind of number one conversation every day, basically, because obviously we're working in a spiritual field with unseen energies that we can't see. Obviously, mediums can see them, but facilitators and most people can't see what's around you. So you are in this kind of mishmash of space, I guess, that there are lots of other energies around and in. And those energies and entities can obviously affect your field, can affect the way you think, can obviously put intrusive thoughts in your mind and encourage kind of negative behaviors, that type of thing. So it's kind of where we are and what we do. And we obviously focus quite heavily on spiritual protection. So I thought this time of the year was quite a good time for us to talk about Halloween. Obviously, Halloween's not far away. I think it's the 28th and the 29th today. So 2 or 3 days' time. 3 days' time, basically, is kind of Halloween. And obviously, from our perspective, the Halloween. So I did a bit of research because I obviously went to my friend ChatGPT as the kind of source of all information, as we do these days. It's kind of AI does have some positive advantages when we're actually trying to find that information and doing deep dives and things on finding info generally. And then, of course, it's up to us to deliberate between what we've read, what we understand, and what we believe. So I'm just going to say hi to Maggie, Connie, and Leon's, I think it is. So from a Halloween perspective, Halloween basically is a kind of Celtic festival, or my understanding of, but generally called Samhain, basically. So Samhain was the Celtic festival back in the day. Again, timelines probably differ, but thousands of years ago, starting in Ireland or somewhere around there. Obviously UK, France, that type of thing. And I think the general gist, really, from the things that I've read, was it was a festival about harvest season and the beginning of winter. So the time associated really with kind of change of season from summer into winter, obviously a time of change of light as well. So things are getting darker and colder. And the Celts basically believed that the night of the October the 31st was the night whereby the boundary between the worlds kind of was the thinnest, I guess. So this we kind of understand to be the night that the kind of the mesh, or the way we talk about things, the veil has thinned, and therefore unseen energies, whether they're entities or earthbounds, obviously have more of a kind of opportunity to kind of involve themselves with the living, really, in whatever way that looks. So this is obviously like a Celt belief back in the day. And we know that spirits kind of roam freely around the planet, and anyone that works in spirituality, and certainly mediums and psychics, are aware that we can see earthbounds, we can see people that have died, we can talk to them, we can communicate with them, and then people that are working in this field know very well that we also deal with and clear entities that are negative from people. So obviously there are positive entities, there are negative entities. So there's always kind of, the good, the bad, positive, negative, everything is polarized one way or another, basically. But obviously we specialize in working with negative entities and clearing earthbounds from people. So Halloween would kind of overlay into our world quite well from that perspective. So going back in time again, during Samhain, the Celts kind of lit big bonfires, which were kind of designed to kind of ward off malevolent negative spirits. And they dressed in costumes, animal skins, heads, that kind of thing, to disguise themselves or cloak themselves from wandering ghosts and spirits. And obviously food offerings were left to try and appease those spirits and ensure that the harvest for the next year was going to be positive. So again, in that kind of Celtic belief around Samhain, this is that kind of understanding, and obviously it kind of overlays into the paganistic aspects of that time, I guess. So if we look at it, it was kind of seen to be a time when the living were slightly concerned about the dead, and we were sort of leaving them offerings, we were cloaking them ourselves and disguising ourselves from them, and probably a time of a bit of worry and panic, I guess, from people that were living, because you can't see things that are dead and you can't see things that are unseen. So it was obviously quite a kind of panicking state around Halloween being sort of October the 31st. So I was going to say hi to Tina, Raquel and Rhonda. Thanks for joining, folks. We're just talking about Halloween, basically, entities, energies. So I think as Halloween evolved over the years, obviously Christianity spread through Ireland, across those Celtic lands over the time. And then obviously different churches incorporate different parts of Samhain into All Saints' Day, November the 1st, and All Souls' Day, which was November the 2nd. So these days were meant to honour basically saints and the deceased. And October the 31st became known as All Hallows' Eve, which of course is why we see that in films, and Hollywood talk about All Hallows' Eve, and we're obviously talking about that line. So that was supposed to be the evening before All Saints' Day, which eventually kind of evolved, I guess, at some point into the term Halloween. So that's kind of where Halloween came from, is this kind of blending of All Hallows' Eves with All Saints' Day. Now, I guess we need to look at why do we celebrate Halloween today. So again, if we could kind of go back in time, it was a celebration, an offering for the harvest of the next year, whereas now it's been kind of mixed from a traditional perspective, and obviously it's been kind of brought into a bit of a spooky time, I guess. So people now dress up in costumes. There's a slight, I guess, understanding of the Celtic traditions, but most people probably don't really understand that at all. And most younger children are looking at Halloween from a kind of trick-or-treating perspective. So it seemed to be a fun time that you dress up in kind of clothing as spirits, ghosts, that type of thing. Make things look as kind of evil and dark as you can, I guess. And effectively, again, my kind of reading of it was the poor used to go out door to door to try to get offerings from people that had more money, and then they would pray basically to the dead in exchange for food from the people that they were kind of knocking the door from. So again, the door knocking came from this kind of concept that poor people were out in the streets at night when other people didn't want to be out during Halloween, and they were basically taking offerings that they would then pray for the dead. So that was the kind of exchange set up. And obviously now we're at the point whereby we're decorating houses and people with spooky themes, I guess, that kind of mean spirits are out wandering around, and therefore entities will be out wandering about as well at the same time. So Halloween's sort of been made this kind of fun festival, basically, but the roots kind of lie in this life and death concept, and again, protecting yourself from negative entities and energies, and obviously celebrating that mystery of like the unknown spirit world. So I guess that kind of evolution has bound to have gone down the line of, it's a kind of celebration of the macabre and supernatural, shifting that concept away from the Celtic festivals and seasonal changes from a spiritual protective perspective. So over time, it's kind of taken on this dark, more horror-inspired tone and theme, which of course kind of fits in with Hollywood movies. Again, people are kind of fearful of Halloween and night of Halloween, and obviously people are out kind of trick-or-treating and doing generally, having fun generally, but again, for some people, it probably wouldn't be considered to be fun. So once we get to that point, I'm just going to say hi to Dave, Elaine, Tracy, and Heather. Thanks for joining, folks. Good to see you here. So again, if we look at the kind of literature, Gothic literature over time, and horror movies from the kind of 19th century had this big fascination, and Gothic novels certainly did, with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Bram Stoker's Dracula. So all of these were sort of fueling that public interest in horror movies, vampires, werewolves, zombies. These are all the imagery that we see now with Halloween. So again, we've got to taking things down a slightly darker kind of viewpoint, really. And then we're looking at kind of ghost stories and legends that talk about Halloween being a time that people reviewed the darker stories in life. And I guess if we look at the TV and movies around sort of the Halloween timeline, we start to see all of the poltergeist films come out, spirit possession. We start to see, again, horror movies, Dracula, Saw, all these sorts of things. So Halloween now is kind of being aligned, I guess, by Hollywood with this very kind of frightening time or frightening day when all of these sort of negative legends are kind of active. So from our perspective, people are walking around the streets, generally having fun, but I guess we need to protect our space. And this, again, is what we do from an SRA perspective. We're all about protection, and we're all about protecting our space, protecting our practitioners. So from my perspective, obviously, if you think about your front door, from a protective perspective, the moment you open your front door and there are people outside, whether it's Halloween or not, effectively, it's still your private space, and you're opening a door to your private space, which means that energy is open to you and obviously to come through that space into your home, into your kind of protected environment. So one of the things that we used to put, we used to have mats that said welcome that we'd leave by the door. But if you think about a welcome mat, you're saying and you're giving intended permission to anything. So welcome means anything outside of your house is welcome to come in. But obviously back in the day, we used to kind of put a hand out and say, thou shall not pass if you mean harm. So that was the way that people would open the doors back in the kind of 18th, 19th centuries, was by a statement. And of course, that statement effectively was, you can only come into my space if you don't mean myself and my family harm. But we don't do that now. We put welcome mats out to welcome anything in, which of course isn't a very good thing. So just thinking about what we're allowing into our space is quite critical. And obviously, when you open the door, you can't really ask people these days, do you mean me harm? So instead, we have to get to a point that we have some sort of spiritual protection at our doorways that kind of blocks and filters energy, is the way that I tend to think of it. So underneath our doormats, for instance, we've got pentagrams that we print out on a piece of A4 paper, put them under the doormat so no one can see them that comes in. But effectively, there's a very protective symbol with the intention to stop anything negative coming in. Then again, we can place other things outside the door. We can place crystals. So black crystals generally are quite good for protection, and crystals obviously push and change energy. So again, we're thinking about what we can put outside our doorways or inside our doorways to stop negativity coming through. But you yourself are the key, because of course you are a human being, spiritual intelligence, locked inside a physical body. So stopping people coming through and stopping energies coming through is up to you, really. So you can state the intention that you only allow positivity through your doorway. And then you can put a thought out to your guide, to your spirit team, to say, I only allow positivity to come through my space into my protected space, into my home. So again, your intention is the key in all of this, really. And when we start working with our guides and locking things in with the spiritual teams that are around us, then those spiritual teams are going to start working on your behalf. So on Halloween, it will be good for you to have made that agreement with your guides, just to put the thought up, can you protect my space? Only allow negative energy in. Negativity is not allowed to pass through that doorway, basically. And then when the children start knocking the door and they're all dressed up in costumes, they're going to have earthbounds around them. Some people that are very negative will probably have entities with them as well. So we just want to make sure that the vibration and the protection is in place at your doorway so that negative things don't cross. And that's the kind of key from our perspective, really. Just going to take a moment to say hi to Heather. Oh, Jono's in the chat, which is cool. Always protecting ourselves. Yep, practitioners, that's what we do. That's what SRA is all about, protection, really. We talk about protection from the moment we wake up, generally to the moment we go to sleep. So protection is kind of the key thing. Say hi to Alexandra. Ollie's joined as well. Good to see you, Ollie. So yeah, so from my perspective, Halloween is kind of a fun day. We can look at it as a fun time. One of the things that we don't really advise from our perspective, certainly from a sort of academy perspective, is horror films. So if you think about when you watch a horror film, although you can have fun watching a horror film, of course, horror films change your energy, they change your emotional state. The idea of a horror film is to make you or put you in a very fearful state. So when you enter a fearful state, adrenaline's in your blood, you start to vibrate at a lower frequency, and therefore you attract more negativity. So horror films are really bad from a spiritual perspective, in our opinion, certainly in my opinion, because they're changing your emotional state. And of course, they're opening you up to negativity. So even though people like to watch horror films, and of course, teenagers tend to dare each other to watch things and they sit and watch things, we all know that we are very, very visual beings. And when we see things, the spiritual part of us doesn't know the difference between reality and TV. So if you're watching a horror film and you're in a state of fear, the spiritual part of you is in a state of fear. Your vibration's going to change and your emotional state's going to change. So obviously, this is why horror films are so bad. And I know from our perspective, we get bookings every week from people, parents primarily, whose children have watched lots of horror films, and then they start to have intrusive thoughts, intrusive feelings, they start to feel different, they become very depressed and very anxious. And of course, because they've been watching horror films, their vibration has dropped, and then they've attracted something negative into their field. And that negative thing could be an earthbound, an entity, or other things that need to be cleared. So horror films are kind of a really bad thing to do from a kind of vibratory perspective for you personally, and of course for your space. Because if someone sat in a room and continue watching horror films, they're changing the vibration of the space, and therefore they're attracting negativity. So on Halloween, it's kind of not a great idea really to sit down whilst you've got people walking around outside dressed as kind of demons, werewolves, and other kind of legendary figures that are negative. Lots of people will be scared. And of course, the vibration generally across the planet is going to be negative. So in a way, if we look at it from our perspective, it's quite a clever thing to do to drop the vibration of the planet by creating a day where everyone's frightened. So old people are going to be sat at home, not going to want to answer their door. They're going to be frightened when their door gets knocked as to what's outside. And obviously, it's not great from that perspective. Just noticed that Anaya's in the chat and Natasha's talking about food dogs, which are good. Thanks, Natasha. I've got food dogs everywhere, I think. The whole room's full of food dogs. Just about. Blue one. Other ones. Lots of other ones. Food dogs outside, food dogs inside. So again, food dogs were kind of temple lions, temple dogs, and the idea is that they guard the space from a kind of unseen spiritual perspective, really. So I've got them kind of behind me, and I quite like the concept of the food dog. Again, it's very intention-based, but I kind of create spiritual energies around the sort of bedroom, around the house, that we kind of create from a thought form perspective to guard the space. So food dogs kind of connect into that same type of theory, basically. I'm going to say hi to Pascal, Elaine, and Lawrence. Horror films are funnier than what I see on the other side. Yeah, that's probably true, actually, Lawrence. Quite a good point. So again, everything's intention-based. If you watch a horror film and you're laughing and you're not in fear, then obviously it's not really going to affect you. It's just horror films that affect you and change your emotional state in a negative way are obviously quite a problem from that perspective, really. So again, from my point of view, and certainly from our point of view, Halloween's been made a very commercial enterprise now. There's a lot of money being made on Halloween, selling costumes and suits and all the paraphernalia that goes around Halloween. And you can obviously have fun out on Halloween with the children doing things, but it's just a case of remembering to put yourself in your protected bubble. You need to be protected when you're walking out in the streets. Your children need to be protected. Your doorway needs protection. You need to use intention and connect to your spirit guides, even if you can't hear them. They can hear you. They can hear every thought that you think, basically, because you're telepathic. You're sending telepathy out. So when you use your intention, that intention translates to a thought, a telepathic thought, on the astral that the guides pick up. So you can ask them to do things for you, and even though you may not be a medium, they'll pick up on the thought and they'll do that for you. So again, can you protect my door? Can you make sure negativity doesn't come in during Halloween? Can you protect my children that are wandering around the streets with lots of people having fun, and some people won't be having fun? So it's just a case of thinking about what's going on from a kind of spiritual perspective rather than the physical. Because as humans, we tend to live in this 3D physical world. What we see is what we believe. We don't really see the spiritual side of us unless you're a medium. If you're a medium, we know that we can talk to other entities and energies, and we do that every day. So to us, that is a normal part of our kind of existence, really. But to people that haven't developed mediumship, that aren't able to talk to guides, that aren't able to see other spirits or other energies and entities, then obviously it's not a normal part of your thought process. It's not a normal part of your day. But it doesn't mean that those things don't exist. It just means that you're not aware of those things, and they can still affect you. And this is what we see from a kind of societal perspective, really, is that the unseen is affecting the seen effectively. And this is kind of one of the things that SRA is all about, is that we're all about kind of bringing awareness to people to understand that we do live in this kind of spiritual soup. There are lots of good entities around us continually. They're here to help us and work with us. And there's also the negative aspect that we need to clear and remove, which is what we do every day. And we've got some fantastic practitioners. So from an SRA perspective now, I think we've got, John and I said, we've got probably over 60 people that have been trained in the last year. So a year ago, when we started to come online, we never thought we'd get to a point that we had sort of 60 truly professional, proficient practitioners that know exactly what they're doing, that are able to kind of do this work, and they're out there every day clearing clients, doing this before their own work. Most of them are holistic practitioners that do different things, offer different services, but clearing the clients first from negativity is effectively the starting point. And this is what Dr. Terence Palmer used to talk about, is that the wounded spirit has to be clean before you can engage in any other healing modality. So this is where we're kind of framing ourselves, really, that we want other holistic practitioners and practices, I guess, to kind of connect with us and to work with us so that we can teach practitioners the concept of let's clean and clear the negativity connected to people before they start to do their own holistic practice, whether that be hypnosis, whether it be healing, Reiki, whichever modality that you work in. Working with effectively unclean spirits connected to a client means that your job is really difficult. But as soon as we clean and bring sovereignty back to the client, your modality is going to have a hugely more positive, beneficial effect on that client in a very fast timeline. So this is kind of what we're talking about from our perspective, really. So I'm just going to go to the chat. So Tracy's talking about food dogs made with clay. Will it work? So again, everything is intention-based, really, Tracy. I mean, I've got, as I said, lots of food dogs around here, all made of different things. Resin, for instance, as well. Clay. All sorts of things. Got some brass. Got some quite cool brass ones up here, actually, that I can show you guys. This is my food dog collection. So there's that chap there. That is quite cool. So I bought that one Olympia a little while ago. But again, these are like Tibetan kind of food dogs, really. And then there's another kind of heavier brass one there, which is kind of like, again, these temple lines. So I quite like them because they look quite nice. They're quite sort of manly, really, from my perspective. And I kind of adorn myself in my little kind of healing room here with these different types of food dogs. So again, it's intention based. But again, we can create, we can visualize, and we can use thought forms to create spiritual energies that protect us and look after our space, and we can give them jobs to do. So as part of our training, as part of the protection courses that I run, and Johnny runs, we kind of work through creating a thought form that kind of sits at the bottom of your bed, whose job it is to protect you whilst you sleep. So these things are kind of easy things to do. They're easy things to think about. And again, we can create kind of spiritual energies that have consciousness that sit in our doorways to our properties and protect the door. They only allow positivity in. They reject negative things. And negative entities know that this is how we work and this is what we do. Okay, so John is talking about ideas. So anyone else that's got any other ideas? There's probably a whole list of things that we can do. I mean, red roses are good. Love hearts are good. So the word love vibrates with a high frequency, and a heart resembles love, basically. So you could put a heart by your front door, you could hang a heart or write the word love, or have a picture frame of love by your front door, picture of your family in. So the intention in there and the vibration is very positive. And again, it has that loving, protective field. So crystals are good. Obviously, they hold memory and vibrational structures, as Lawrence has said. Quartz is good because we can program quartz, so we can give it intentions, we can clear it, we can give it things to do. So again, it's just starting to think sort of outside the box about your space, really, and creating a loving, protective environment. When you walk through that front door, you need to be walking into somewhere that you see pictures of holidays that you've had that make you smile to yourself, and you remember that you were on a fantastic holiday, sat by a beach, whatever you were doing with your family, friends, partners, wives, husbands. These sorts of pictures on your walls change the way you think. They change your emotional state, and they bring you back to that high vibration. And this is what we're kind of all thinking about and talking about, really, is that everything is vibration. Everything comes back to vibratory frequency, and we want yours to be as high as we can get it. So negative entities, negative things vibrate at low frequency. We need to be vibrating at high frequency, and therefore we're out of the reach of any type of negativity. So we can kind of work or walk in, I guess, from that perspective, both worlds really, but trying to get your vibration to be as high as you can by eating good food, dietary things, thought process, meditation, setting intentions, setting boundaries, pushing back negative people. We all have negative people in our life, but we need to ensure that we have boundaries, that we push them back. And most of the negative people that we all deal with generally are family and friends, parents, and people that kind of spend lots of time in your life and have an opinion on what you do and don't do. So again, setting boundaries and keeping those people away from your kind of front door on that kind of picket fence boundary in front of you is obviously a good thing to do. So say hi to Cynthia. Good morning from NY. Yes, we enjoyed ourselves in NY, and the weather was better than over here as well, which was always good. So Alexandra's talking about a dragon figure watching her home and a picture of Chen having an eye on the door, which is always good. I was talking to someone this morning actually on a Chen chat, and she said that she sleeps with a little magnet of Chen under her pillow, which I thought was quite sweet and quite nice to hear, really. But again, people or figures or deities that you believe are positive and they're looking after you, you set the intention, set the boundary, and then you bring that into your space. So it kind of doesn't really matter what it is, whether it's a piece of paper. You can write quotes and put them underneath the doormat. Thou shalt not pass. If you mean me harm. You could print that out on a piece of paper, put it under your doormat, or laminate it, stick it underneath your doormat, outside or inside, and that intention goes into that thing that you've done, and that changes the vibration, changes the energy, and protects the space. There's a whole load of things that we can do basically to start thinking about increasing protection, but with Halloween around the corner, obviously it's one of the things. And then again, from our perspective, talking about clients, we've obviously got some amazing practitioners. We do clearings. Most of them are offering clearings continually. So if you're worried about Halloween, you're worried about picking up things, or your family or your children, picking up energies, negative energies over Halloween, and get a clearing book with some of them. If you go to the SRA practitioner page, there's a list there of all of these certified practitioners, and every single one of them can help you. Every single one of them has come up to a very high standard to be a certified practitioner in our organization. And John and I stand behind every one of them. So if you're feeling concerned, worried, anxious, just like a double check, head on over to the SRA practitioners page and get yourself booked in with a practitioner for a quick checkup. So Cricket is asking, does having a mirror next to the door for people arrive, absorb their energy work? So mirrors, I guess Feng Shui does that, doesn't it? With Feng Shui, you can put a mirror by the door. The idea being that it reflects negativity back out. So we've got those, is it the Paku mirrors that you can put by your front door? And they're supposed to basically reflect negativity. So all of these things basically, I think, are kind of intention-based, certainly from my perspective. So whatever you think about is what you bring about. Whatever you put your energy and thought into is what you create. So every thought that you have creates energy out on the astral, basically. So just thinking and spending some time, you could spend some time meditating, lie on the bed, just think about protected space, visualize a pentagram in your mind across your front door. and therefore you bring that into play. So you can visualize things in your mind and place them in parts of your home, and they'll provide you with protection, because your intention is to set that boundary, to set that protection, and then of course that comes into play. So I'm just going to thank Dave for popping up the URL for the spirit release practitioners. So there's a whole list of people on there, Dave obviously being one of them. And again, they've all got appointments. With Halloween coming, I'd imagine that most of us will be quite busy, because people tend to panic a bit and want to make sure that their space is clear. And obviously that in the morning they haven't picked anything up. So if you've got concerns, drop on over, get yourself booked an appointment with someone. Cricket's talking about unable to visualize. So some people, I was quite fortunate, to be honest, Cricket. I could visualize quite easily. So I can have my eyes open and just still see a scene in my mind. But some people do find it quite difficult to visualize, but then intention is the key. So just thinking the things, I see the things and create them. You can think those things and you still create them. You don't need to be able to see in your mind. You can just think the thoughts. And when you think the thoughts, you'll create the same thing in the astral. So again, it's, and maybe like in, obviously, people, there's plenty of people that we know that kind of running spiritual development courses, connecting to guides, that kind of thing in meditation. So guided meditations are good. They help you to learn to visualize, open your chakras, and obviously start to engage that spiritual intelligence and that aspect of you. So it might be worth considering joining or booking yourself on some sort of spiritual development course, which could help you to bring that visualization back online. John O'C here talking about Christmas tree baubles were used as witches' balls. Man-minded information, you are, mate, to be fair, to deflect negative energy. They used to be placed at windows before Christmas trees. So Jono comes from that kind of pagan tradition and aspect, so he tends to know quite a lot of things about this, which is good. It's something I never knew, actually. I thought Christmas tree baubles were just there to annoy the cat and the dog, and generally kind of get mangled up in the box, so you have to take them apart and try and get them on the tree every year. So they did have actually a purpose in time past, which is good to hear, mate. Thanks for adding that. Okay, so has anyone else got any questions about Halloween? We've got another podcast on Thursday, basically, which is Halloween. So we're going to go through and talk about some other things then. And other than that, I think we've covered front door protection, talked a bit about entities and spirits, a bit about the kind of background around Halloween from that perspective, how to protect your space, how to clear your space. Horror films are the big things that we don't advise at all, certainly not on Halloween, as much as you might be drawn to that type of thing. Johnny's talking about honouring your ancestors, which of course is another good thing to do. If the veil is the thinnest on Halloween, and that's what the general understanding and belief is, then of course you can put a thought out to your ancestors, to your parents, to people that have passed, that they're in your thoughts, you still love them, you miss them. You can put these thoughts out, and of course those thoughts become something in the astral, and they hit that person. So it is quite a good time to kind of, like John has been saying, really, sort of honouring people from the past. And we all come from a hierarchical line of family. We're all part of families. We incarnate into family units. We all have parents and grandparents and such like. And even if they're deceased, or you don't know them, or you're adopted, you still energetically come from a human line of family that we can think about and we can say thanks to for allowing us to sort of be here in the physical, as much as sometimes we all wonder what we're doing here and why we're here and whether this is a great place to be. But we're obviously all here for a good reason, and therefore it is worth just thinking about that ability to honour the people that have come before you, really. And we're the same. We're here now today. We won't be here in another 100 years. There'll be another version of us walking around if we have children, and those people will then look to our energy. What did we do? What did we come here to do? What did we teach? What did we change? One of the things Chen talks about quite often when people say, what's my path? What am I here to do? His answer is just wake up in the morning. Just to wake up in the morning every day and to have your energy on the planet. Have a clear thought process, speak your truth, speak to people with integrity. Just be here and hold that vibration is all many of us actually need to do. So we don't kind of need to be sort of superheroes. We just need to wake up. I think that's quite a grounding thing to think, really. So John was talking about he honours the people that were persecuted back in time. Obviously healers, community healers, leaders, people that were doing herbal crafts, obviously witches were burnt at the stake for their beliefs. So there is a time, I guess, when people that were interested in the things that we're interested in from a spiritual perspective, were kind of removed from the planet because of their beliefs and the things that they said and did. So we are quite lucky that time has moved on, because anyone that is now spiritual, certainly working with spiritual energies and entities in the way that we do, would have been persecuted in time gone by. So humanity has kind of moved forward, which is quite nice to think about and to see, really. And obviously from past life perspective, Cricket's talking about past lives. So we've all had lots of past lives, and obviously those past lives have some sort of overlay and influence onto life that we have today. So it can be worth doing past life meditations and going back into some of your past lives just to see who you were, what you did, how that life ended, and what lessons that you learn, really. We do past life meditations quite often in our protection classes to take people back to the last past life that had the biggest influence on today. So not just to find out that you were some Roman soldier that died because you did what you were told, but let's look at what happened in a past life that's very relevant to today, to your life today, the things that you needed to learn from that past life that you're bringing forward. So again, meditation is a great way to do some of these things and go on these sort of past life journeys and experiences. So Elaine's talking about the animated film Coco. I'm not sure what that is, actually, Elaine. I'm probably too old. It's probably like a children's film, is it, or something? If it's animated, that's obviously gone past my my line. I think the last things I used to watch with my kids were things like Bugs Life and Mulan and those sorts of things that have been burnt into my brain because I watched them like a million times over when Ollie and Bri were probably like 6 and 7 or something. Okay, cool. I think from my perspective, it probably brings today to a close, really. So thanks for joining, folks. It's been great to have you here. Great to have some questions and comments, which makes my job easier, really, because I can refer to those and we can talk about the things that you guys are interested in, really. So I look forward to Thursday when we'll have the next chat actually on Halloween. And maybe at the same time, we can probably invoke the guys to start to do a bit of work for us. And we can kind of ask Chen, Whitehawk and the team to actually provide some protection, for you guys that are on this chat and this call, which will be good. So I'll say goodbye, have a good day, and we'll catch you in basically 2 days' time.